I think taking this motion is beneficial for society and also individuals. And I think like going to hospital is a responsibility as a member of the society. So we back to propose. Let me start with the definition. As a definition, like citizens should have go like medical checkup once in a year. And if they do not go, we will impose them like reasonable punishment, like impose fine. And that check is free, like provided by government or university or company, like which is you're going like very usually. And let me say some of the like, consensus of this debate. Like for example, in Japan, 70% of Medicare fee was like paid from the tax. The insurance system is run by tax. Like 70% it's kind of math problem, but if you cost $100, $70 is paid from the tax. So let me move on to the first point. I'm going to talk what is tax is principal arguments. Like tax is, of course, money, right? Gathered from citizens, all citizens. And we think that money is cluster of his efforts. For example, even poor is paying his money. Like 12 hours or 13 hours, he's like doing part-time job and getting only small salary. But he's paying money from that like money, right? And even like students is paying that. He has to study, but he's also working as a like, part-time job worker. Even the kind of like poor or like busy people is paying that tax. Why? In order to make government function, right? Which is beneficial for all kinds of people. Insurance fee, like pension system, or reconstruction in like Tohoku region. So all citizens have to pay tax. If we do not pay tax, we will be punished severely, right? We have to pay additional money to the government, or we will be imprisoned in jail for 5 years or 10 years. It's severe punishment. Ladies and gentlemen, in the status quo, these people who is not going to hospital is wasting money. So, what is different between wasting money or do not pay money? There is a tax bill, right? If we do not put tax into that bill, we will be punished severely. But if we like pull out tax from the tax bill, we will not be punished. We think it's unfair. So we think it's government is responsibility as a member of the society. So they have to show us why these two things are different. Let me move on to the second point. It's about aspect of society. That's a harm principle. We admit that choice is to some extent important, but there should be line. Because choice exists on the existence of society, right? So we have to respect society if we talk about individuals' choice. So if we harm society, that choice should not be respected. So line is whether there is serious harm or not by this choice. We think there is harm. Why? First, government budget is of course limited. And in this recession, of course, our government budget is shrinking day by day. And also, number of citizens is limited, also like taxes limited and government budget limited. But the government has many things to do, like pay to all elderly people pensions, or like we have to protect minimum standard of living for poor people who is nearly dying. Or we have to pay reconstruction fee in like for example in Japan we have to reconstruct Tohoku region, and like in Indonesia we have to reconstruct Aceh region, right? And we have to pay education fee, right? It's in order to protect future of the children, innocent children. So it's very important. And secondly, insurance fee is very big. As I said, 70% of medical fee will be paid from the tax. And even in status quo, there are many cancer or people who have cancer or like who have adult disease, like diabetes, right? And we have to pay for the doctors and the medicines and systems, like new systems. So we think that insurance fee is like oppressing the government's budget. And after that, what will going to happen? That people will go to hospital constantly because they don't want to be punished, right? Like it's a simple mechanism. And so we can find it easily in the first stage. For example, when we talk about cancer, it's not like in the first stage, serious disease. It's like mismutation of the like genes, right? So if we find it in the first stage, we can cure it very easily with cheap price, right? When we talk about diabetes, of course, it's not like serious disease in the first place. It's like overeating or over drinking in the first stage. So if doctor check it and doctor find the problem in the first place, we can solve it with cheap price. So we can provide pensions, minimum standard of living, reconstruction and education, which I already told you, which is very important. So from the aspect of society, we have to take this, I guess. In the
status quo, people who go to the hospital is also paying the taxes like other people. That's why we say this kind of action is too additional burden for this kind of people. Don't you?
Example, please. Like these people are paying tax, of course, but that tax is not enough for paying 70% of his Medicare fee, right? So it's like 1% or 2, no, not on 1%, 0.001%, right? So like 79.99% of Medicare fee was paid from the tax. So it's a problem. Now I'm going to talk about individual aspect. It's paternalistic. Yes, we admitted that choice is to some extent important. But if people are irrational, or if people do not think about the future, we have to regulate his choice. For example, when we talk about car, we have to wear seatbelt, right? Because people do not know what will going to happen if car crash. Because it's physics problem, right? People do not run with that kind of fast speed, right? So for people, it's difficult to understand what will going to happen if car crash. We can apply this case to this principle because when we talk about disease, people tend to think short-termly. Why? Because first, when we talk about disease, he will not feel pain in the first stage. He will feel pain in the last stage of the disease. So he tends to think short-termly. Secondly, people tend to think I will not be patient. For example, talking of lottery, people think I will be the winner. Even though it's not true, right? It's only 0.0%. So people tend to think very optimistically. What will going to happen after taking this plan? People go to the hospital. It's important is, as I already said, we can save life, which is universal benefit for the human. They may say that they feel a little bit uncomfortable, but people feel uncomfortable because he's living, right? So life is universal benefit, and we have to take this plan. The government should be paternalistic in this case. So from the aspect of society, individuals, and as a principle of tax, grand final is calling us.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. Speaker. Grand final never called Mr. Speaker. And we believe that as long as we have a life, that we also have a right to utilize the body as long as this action is not harmful others. So basically, we believe we should respect body autonomy in particular situation. So we proudly oppose this motion. And basically, I'm going to tell you three things. Number one, why we have to respect the right to deal with their own body as long as it is never harmful to others. And second of all, I'm going to tell you why, especially in this context, we have to respect the right to body autonomy, because the certainty as we can find by mandatory health check and time and burden to take health check is totally different from person to person. And third of all, I'm going to tell you, my partner already pointed out, but it's just additional burden for individual, and we can, by depriving the choice of individual and taking it is particularly pernicious to take this proposal. Before that, some rebuttal to the Prime Minister. Today's Prime Minister shamelessly said there's such a national health care, it's just waste of money. But Mr. Speaker, this analysis is totally not true. Number one, the national health care is just a safety net for citizens to ensure their health condition. No thank you, at least. So, and moreover, as the uncertainty is one of the criteria we set the national health condition. Of course, nobody can certain prospect to get accident. For example, if one person suddenly attacked by a car, and even though such a kind of case, we can't see the certain prospect, they have to utilize the national healthcare system. So the certainty is out of criteria to use the national healthcare. And moreover, if the national healthcare being unfair is can be a criteria to take this proposal, but to conserve national health care. But so even though if the national health unfair can be a criteria, we have to abolish national health care, because the amount of national health care each person uses is totally different from person to person. So such kind of unfairness couldn't be a criteria to propose this motion. And Mr. Speaker, no thank you. On the tax issue, as the budget is limited, so we have to take this proposal. Ridiculous. Number one, is that this is not only way to get tax, Mr. Speaker. And so by not taking this proposal, we can get a certain amount of tax by raising consumption tax or other way. And uniquely harmful of this point is no thank you. As we deprive choice to not to go healthcare and utilize their own time by working or doing other kind of things. So depriving choice is a very pernicious thing, Mr. Speaker. And moving on to the first issue about why generally we have to respect bodily autonomy. Mr. Speaker, the idea of bodily autonomy is basically we have to respect the individual right to use their own body as long as the action is not harmful for others. Why? No, thank you. Why? Because the choice is the only way to make their life better, Mr. Speaker. So that's why as long as the action is never harmful, we have to respect it. For example, as we allow people to work as a very dangerous job, for example, coal miner, or we can allow people working as a system engineer, working all day long and not sleeping, Mr. Speaker. So that their action is not harmful to us others, Mr. Speaker. That's why we allow, no thank you. That's why we allow the people to work as such kind of severe job. And moreover, today's Prime Minister tried to say future prospect can be a criteria by using example of seatbelt. But Mr. Speaker, what a silly. Mr. Speaker, even the status quo, even though we can't see any prospects of their future body condition, we allow the certain choice related to the health condition. For example, as the tobacco and alcohol, it is very clear example we allow the body autonomy even though they can't see any prospect in the future. And today's Prime Minister using the example as a seatbelt, but Mr. Speaker, seatbelt deprive nothing of us, Mr. Speaker. That is a crucial difference between seatbelt and alcohol and other kind of things. And later please. So the future prospect can be a criteria to infringe the individual right to deal with their own body, Mr. Speaker. And before moving a second, I take it.
As I pointed out, the target of this state is selfishly do not go to hospital and get disease imposing a burden to the healthcare system. How can I say that this is not this cannot be a criteria?
Okay, if the analysis water, we have to ban any kind of unhealthy lifestyle. For example, we have to ban tobacco and alcohol. It's because it's very harmful for others because they spend a tax. What a shameful. And moving on to the second aspect, especially this context, we have to respect the body autonomy. Mr. Speaker, as I already told you, the time and the certainty we can find the mandatory health care system and time and burden to take as a health check is totally different from person to person. And especially this context, only then citizens know what's best to do. So the governmental intervention should be minimum. For example, at the time, the workers who do want to work as much as possible, one day it's so huge loss, they have to lose hundreds of dollars as they desperately want. No, thank you. And second aspect on the fasting is to take a photo by using volume, they have to fast all day long. It is so huge and it has so huge detrimental effect for those who do want to eat, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the gravity of their action is totally different from person to person. That's why we have to allow any kinds of life as long as it is never harmful toward others. And third of all, I gotta tell you that the practical harm by taking this proposal, we just put additional burden on them. Today's Prime Minister said national welfare, today's Prime Minister mentioned about the national welfare. But Mr. Speaker, we already told you, all citizens pay for national health care. That's why all citizens can utilize it. Of course, there is a certain unfairness, Mr. Speaker. So, but because of the national healthcare system, the citizen lives best for them. And if they get disease, they can use national healthcare and they get back to society by healing themselves. But after we take this proposal, is that we deprive one of the important choice, that is the individual action, Mr. Speaker. So by taking this proposal, as I already said, the workers have to lose their all day to earn, and the people who have to fast all day long, of course, it is so huge harm for them. So to respect the individual lifestyle, we proudly oppose this motion. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, what is disappointing about the legal opposition is that he gave us a very generic idea that different values should be embraced and accepted in society, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, he never explained to us why this principle specifically applies for this case, Mr. Speaker, meaning that he never explained to us why this active choice not to go to medical checkup should be allowed and should carry some important meaning, Mr. Speaker. This was like extreme failure of the opposition side. We want the next speaker to explain on this, applicability or the specific reason why we should actively oppose this motion, although it's going to be too late. So having said that, I'm going to examine two issues. First, I'm going to directly engage with the case, and second, I'm going to enhance further arguments about how they'll be beneficial, principally and practically toward the individual and society, Mr. Speaker. So first of all, let me engage with the case, Mr. Speaker. In the first representative, they told us how the choice should be embraced and allowed across the board in society, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, we think, Mr. Speaker, within this point, he responded to my opponent's argument, saying that a lack of future prospect cannot be the reason to restrict and harm certain choice, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all, Mr. Speaker, in this case, Mr. Speaker, we think first of all, the clear line between the example he gave us, case, in this specific case is that, Mr. Speaker, those people are deliberately and intentionally, Mr. Speaker, causing huge burden to society, Mr. Speaker, incredible harm in terms of, for example, taxpayers having to pay so much money, Mr. Speaker, who have no responsibility whatsoever for example, the deliberate choice not to go to hospitals and the deliberate choice to either smoke constantly to the extent that they grow disease which can cause harm, massive harm, financial harm to people, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we think, Mr. Speaker, in the case of, for example, so the legal position said, those insurance is only a safety net, and therefore everyone has the possibility of, Mr. Speaker, utilizing money. But the distinction here is that we are okay with people, Mr. Speaker, out of their responsibility relying upon the healthcare insurance. But in this case, Mr. Speaker, we're talking about the people who deliberately, Mr. Speaker, voluntarily not to go to the hospital, Mr. Speaker. As a consequence, they grow disease which can cause harm to society, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we don't think, Mr. Speaker, people have the right to deliberately, Mr. Speaker, cause significant harm to others, Mr. Speaker, which we clearly see as a criteria of crime, Mr. Speaker, as a criteria of punishment. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this intention itself is extremely bad, Mr. Speaker, and therefore there is a significant difference between, in this case, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, they told us, they also told us in their response to the argument, Mr. Speaker, how the difference in terms of dependence between individuals. But, Mr. Speaker, we are okay, again, Mr. Speaker, we are okay with people depending on the national health insurance to a different degree out of their responsibility. For example, we are okay with people depending on the system because of their handicap, which is inherent in their body. But in this case, we are talking about the people who can and should prevent the disease from developing in the first instance, but still choosing, Mr. Speaker, not to go to hospitals regularly, Mr. Speaker. As a consequence, they are knowing the harm, knowing the risk to the society, over the disease and also to themselves and society. They are constantly making this choice, Mr. Speaker, which they never explain to us why, which is important, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, in this specific scenario, we have the right to cover this kind of choice, and that's why, Mr. Speaker, we think that is justifiable. In the case of coal miners or shitty choice people are making, Mr. Speaker, there is no tangible harm to others, Mr. Speaker. They're just risking their body. But in this case, Mr. Speaker, we think they are harming society. There's a clear distinction between any of the examples they told us and, Mr. Speaker, this specific case. But second argument, he talks about how, Mr. Speaker, there'll be harm in terms of people losing time. Ridiculous, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, we are going to enforce every single citizen in society to go to medical checks, and therefore, no one is going to losing out, Mr. Speaker. Your rivals, your competitors, are also going to have to go to hospital every single year, Mr. Speaker, and therefore, no one is going to get significant disadvantage or damage compared with other people you compete with in society, Mr. Speaker, and therefore we think, moreover, in terms of the company, they're only going to lose, for example, in 2 or 3 days, right, for each employee, right, and therefore, they can, for example, they know that, they have expectation that they are going to lose their personnel for a certain period of time, and therefore they can cover up before planning ahead, Mr. Speaker, and therefore there's no practical harm coming from the proposal, and that's why we think we do not have any reason to oppose this motion, Mr. Speaker. The second of all, let me enhance the argument, Mr. Speaker, because, Mr. Speaker, we think there is extreme harm, right? In Germany, 3.5 trillion yen is put to, for example, deal with the disease which is caused by smoking, Mr. Speaker. In the case of the United States, we are using 7.3 trillion yen to cause to cure this kind of disease which is caused from smoking, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, there's extreme harm to those people, Mr. Speaker. Now, they ridiculously told us we can increase taxes, Mr. Speaker, by consumption tax. First of all, Mr. Speaker, in this day and age, many countries are, right, having increased amount of debt, Mr. Speaker, and moreover, because of the recession, Mr. Speaker, the revenue which is going to the government is decreasing, and therefore, we don't think it is feasible and possible for the government to accumulate a large amount of money aside from this, in the status quo, Mr. Speaker. So we think, Mr. Speaker, because as my partner told you, those taxpayers' money is precious and limited, Mr. Speaker. We think, Mr. Speaker, by spending money for those people, we are not providing them enough money for example, people with handicap, people who are unemployed because of the recession out of their responsibility, or, Mr. Speaker, people who cannot work for some disease, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, in those circumstances, we should prioritize those people, Mr. Speaker. We think not paying money to those people enough is a huge harm, right? And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we think we should punish those people because we see there's a clear harm in terms of like trillions yen, which I already told you, we think there's enough reason why we should intervene in this case. Yes, sir.
Even after your proposal, after they take the medical check care, if you find the disease, you go to the hospital. That's why the risk for the money is not so useful.
Well, on my point I told you, which was never engaged with my partner, Mr. Speaker, by finding out that this is quite early stage, Mr. Speaker, we are going to prevent this kind of thing, Mr. Speaker, cost of money, Mr. Speaker, because, Mr. Speaker, by detecting your disease at the early age, before developing, Mr. Speaker, you can cure the disease. On the other hand, if we let those diseases continue and develop, Mr. Speaker, we have to pay so much amount of money until they die, Mr. Speaker, right, for surgery and operation, etc. In terms of like cancer and tumor, Mr. Speaker, those tumors are going to shift to other parts of the body if we do not detect them early stage, right? And we have to have much more operation for 7 times or so, Mr. Speaker, if we continue the status quo. By adopting our proposal, we are going to cut the root cause of disease at early stage, and therefore we are not going to have development, a shift of those kind of things, and then we are going to significantly mitigate the cost, which is burden on taxpayers, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, recognizing that non-smokers, for example, people who go to medical checkups regularly already in the status quo, Mr. Speaker, having huge burden and having huge financial cost for what they are not responsible whatsoever, Mr. Speaker, we think that is extreme harm, Mr. Speaker, and that we should intervene in this case. Also for individuals, there's a benefit, right, Mr. Speaker? Obviously, Mr. Speaker, in the status quo, as my partner told you, Mr. Speaker, for 2 reasons, individuals are extremely being careless, Mr. Speaker, because they're optimistic. They believe that exception. The reason why the government should enforce seatbelt is because people are generally optimistic without any kind of external force, right? That is why the government should enforce people to wear seatbelt. Secondly, people do not consider the long-term invisible harm, rather they prioritize the short-term, Mr. Speaker, benefit of not taking time to go to this hospital. For these 2 reasons, individuals need paternalistic intervention by the government so that they can prevent the disease from developing, Mr. Speaker. And our proposal, we are going to make this, force these people to go to the hospital, Mr. Speaker. We are going to, Mr. Speaker, solve the problem of people being, Mr. Speaker, not making fair utilitarian calculus in the status quo, comparing the short-term benefits and long-term harm, Mr. Speaker. That is why we are going to provide individuals, Mr. Speaker, for dying right now, Mr. Speaker, because of the disease developing to the extent they have to die, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we have principal reason to intervene in the individual. And for that, we are going to provide benefit to the individual as well, Mr. Speaker. And that's principally and practically, we are extremely proud to propose.
Thank you, honorable judges and ladies and gentlemen in this house. Well, what they're trying to do in this debate is not taking the medical checkups is legally responsible actions, and it's totally harmful act, and which should be avoided in our society. Which means that not taking medical checkups is equal to risking their lives. So other types of action risking their lives, like doing the dangerous jobs or dangerous activities, is also stigmatized and looked seen as a society as a bad and harmful action in a society which should be avoided. And that is why it stigmatizes these actions and infringes the choice of the people. So we're very proud to oppose this debate. 2 things to talk about. Firstly, why their proposal infringing the choices by stigmatizing a certain type of actions, and secondly, why it's principally wrong because their proposal is a double standard contradicted to the idea of the national healthcare system. But before that, moving on to rebuttals. A couple of rebuttals to the previous speaker. First of all, as my partner already told you, predictability is out of debate. And they're trying to, no thank you, they're trying to say that they have, who do not take the medical checks up, have malicious intention because they do not want to go to the hospital, and so whether you are trying to go to the hospital or not is a criteria, and so they should be legally responsible. But they're trying to distorting the fact that whether you go to the hospital or not is same to whether you are risking your lives or not, and the actions which are risking your lives is also the same as other types of dangerous activities, like the dangerous jobs, like doing the boxing or doing the rock climbing or smoking or drinking so much or so on. So we believe that they're distorting the fact that whether you go to the hospital or not is not related in this debate. So the key issue in this debate is whether you have the intention to risk your lives or not, but other types of actions which are risking your lives is permitted. The government is allowing the smoking or drinking excessively or doing a dangerous job, rock climbing or coal mining or so on. Why you allow the dangerous acts which are actively risking your lives, but on the other hand, do not allow the choice not to go to the hospital and do not take the medical checks up, which are the same as risking your life? It's totally contradicted a statement. No, thank you. And also, they said there is a clear distinction in not going to the hospital or doing risky activities because they can predict by going to the hospital. But it's no, thank you. Because they said, no thank you, they said that such people who are doing the risky things but not going to the hospital are oppressing the national budget. It's totally harmful. But Mr. Speaker, please imagine, there are many people who are doing the risky jobs or risky activities. Like if you're working as a coal miner, there is always a risk of being crushed by stones, or if you are a rock climber or boxer, there's a high possibility of breaking your legs. And in that cases, in that unpredictable cases, you need to be cured and you need to get the money from the taxpayers. So we believe in these cases, also we cannot predict cases, but such people who are doing the risky activities and need the national budget, they are also oppressing the national budget. So we believe why people who are not going to the hospital and do not take the medical checks up, only these people are legally responsible and other type of people are not legally responsible. There's no clear distinction from their side of the house. And moreover, they said the problem of their stance is no thank you. On one hand, allow dangerous acts, but on the other hand, do not take the medical checks up and risking your life is bad. But it's principally contradicted, as I told you. Now moving on to our argument, how it infringes the choices of some certain members of society by stigmatizing certain activities. As I told you, not taking medical checkups means actively risking your life. But there are many activities, not just not take the medical checkup, but doing risky jobs like working as a coal miner, or working as a boxer or snowboarders, which are also actively harming your body, damaging your body. Because if you work as a boxer, you have to be kicked and punched all day and all night. And that's why you are damaging your body every time when you practice. And when you do the match, it's also risking your life. And it's the same as not going to the hospital and take a medical checkup, because it's the same as risking your life. Why? There's a clear distinction of the type. No, thank you. And what happens is, the people who not go into the hospital and not take the medical checks up are become legally responsible suddenly after taking this proposal. What happens is, no thank you, it sent a message to the society that risking your life is totally bad and evil kind of action, because it is oppressing the national budget and it's wasting the taxpayers' precious money. And what happens is, drinking or smoking and other type of dangerous actions actively risking your lives are also labeled as harmful and evil actions, because it's also oppressing the national budget. What happens is, no thank you, they're saying that other kind of dangerous actions is okay. Not taking the medical checks off, only that actions is bad. But we believe other type of dangerous actions are also labeled as evil and avoidable actions in the society. And people who have preference to smoke or drink or do the violent action, do the dangerous jobs are also labeled as evil things. They cannot pursue their own happiness, because there is also societal pressure not to do that. Yes.
You say these jobs will come with all, risk all times. Exactly, those jobs will come with short-term risk. But in this case, people like disease will come with long-term risk. That is why people cannot see those risks in the long term, and that is why we have to force them to do so. So that's a distinction between
people who want to see the risk of becoming disease and who want to avoid the becoming disease are already going to the hospital and take the medical checks up. Why we have to force the people who don't care about becoming disease and to go to the hospital and take the medical checks up? It's also the choice of the people. Because, as my partner told you, the bodily autonomy is a basic idea of the society. Calculation of benefit and harm is different from people to people, because the value of happiness is different. Because their side is totally paternalistic by saying that not going to the hospital, not taking the medical checks up is totally stupid things. You have to go do that. But some people think that even if I don't go to the hospital and take the medical checks up and become diseased, it's not a problem, because by doing so, I waste the time and money, and by doing that, I can work longer, and I can feed my children, I can send my children to give enough academic achievement to children, so they do their own calculus of benefit and harm, while we have to impose the paternalistic view on the certain people who don't want to go to the hospital and don't want to take the medical checks up. So we believe that after taking this proposal, dangerous actions cannot be pursued, cannot be done, and we cannot do the dangerous action which brings the happiness to a certain member of society. It's totally harmful for the choice and depriving the choices of a certain member of society. That's a very proud to vote.
Okay, we allow the choice of lifestyle itself. However, all lifestyles have companies and consequences, and we have to take a balance between those choices. We believe that those people who don't take regular medical check are bringing huge harm on other people. We believe we want to be a balance. That's the reason we're standing here on the side of the house. Let me summarize the speech. I will summarize in mainly two aspects. First of all, about the principal issue, whether the line we gave you is valid or not. The second of all is a practical consequence, practically that whether this is beneficial for those for the citizen or not. Let's explain one by one. Okay, first of all, we believe that we told you the two criteria that to justify this motion. First of all, we told you that tax should be used for everyone, and one kind of only part people, self-insured people should not use the taxes, Mr. Speaker. Because we told you, and because, for example, in the case of diabetes people, those people are selfish lifestyle, such as eating snacks every day, every night, or those gray sports and so on. Because of selfish lifestyles, because those people don't take the best of the customer, those people have high blood pressure, and those people are high likely to suffer from a heart attack. And for the case of smokers, those people are of course, are likely to get cancer, so therefore we believe that those people are likely to use many medical expenses. For example, a hospital, they occupy the hospital bed or ambulances, and of course it requires a huge amount of money, such as if they need operations, there are many money, such as millions or thousands of money is used for those selfish people. Because of that, if there are those huge million thousand people money, we can provide many foods many places for other people to live, but because we told you but understand those people do not take medical check, which means that those people do not try to prevent nothing. Try to minimize harm, or try to use the money of other people. Those people actively offending other people. Therefore, they have to respond. They take responsibility for the deed. Therefore, we leave that point stands. Okay, I take.
Okay, your problem is deliberate unhealthy lifestyle. But why we don't attack the direct cause, the imposing the fat tax or banning tobacco or alcohol or something?
It's not to be debated, first of all. And we believe that second of all, that we can minimize the harm. Of course, some diseases much amount of diseases are related to lifestyle. Some diseases are related to my father and great-daughter, like genes or so on, which is inherent and so on. Therefore, we believe that this motion is very beneficial to prevent harm before it's exacerbated. Having said, and the syllable is a paternalistic thing, and there's a paternalistic point. We told you in the first place under Sasco, those people do not go to the hospital because of hesitation, or because of hesitation, or because they want to escape or fear, and so on. Therefore, those people do not go. But after the proposal, because first of all, everyone goes, therefore there's no room for them to hesitate. And second of all, of course, told you because we can minimize the harm to know the reality. So therefore, we believe that those paternalistic points stands no against from the other side. Having said, let's go to the second issue about practical consequences. Okay, no, thank you. Okay, before that, sorry. First break, they said what they told you that other job. They talked about other jobs such as boxing or gold miner and so on. but this is okay. First of all, we are okay to exclude those people, and second of all, like those my father created torture in the POI. Those job concerned those people who are engaged in those jobs are really concerned about our short-term risk and so on. Therefore, those people were well aware of that. And on the other hand, because we create torture, those about health is long-term, because it is invisible. Many people do not feel urgency to prevent those things actively. Therefore, those things will accumulate and it's very fearsome. And of course, those people do not, despite the fact those people are not aware. Therefore, this is the extinction. Last of all, because thirdly, that boxers or car racers are forced to join in a private welfare because it has risk and so on. Therefore, by joining those welfare systems, private welfare system, those people are forced to minimize the harm on other people. Lastly, that because for example, like even under in case of self-interest, those people are excluded from welfare system even under self. And in United States, therefore, we believe that those other occupation is out of the debate. So, having said this, the practical consequence, of course, we torture that under status quo because those people have no opportunity to join. No, thank you. Sorry. Have no opportunity to face with the reality, but we torture that if we take the plan, because those people are not really have to constantly check about the disease, therefore this leads to our discovery of the pain and so on. Therefore, those people can cure, can prevent the disease or cure disease in the early stages. Therefore, this way we can prevent the harm. We can prevent those people's health. And moreover, the consequences, of course, by preventing the escalation, because what we need is that only several pills or several medicine. But if we overlook this procedure, those people, the consequences is inevitable. Those people have to spend huge amount of money. If we compare the statistics, of course, we can, even if those medical costs requires to some extent cost, though if we compare the amount of money, of course, the latter is much problematic. That's the reason, for the reason we are very proud to propose.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get to sum up this debate, I have to point out the principal contradiction between their model and their argument. They say on the one side, the waste of money is a problem in the hospital 114. However, on the other side, they allow the dangerous activities such as tobacco or alcohol. More than that, they still remain the national healthcare system, which is the root cause of their problem in the first place. I don't know their stance in the first place. Even though my partner already pointed out, we cannot just any answer. Having said that, let me move on our two questions. Firstly, whether or not it is justifiable to impose a certain value about the health. And secondly, whether or not regular medical checkup system is social responsibility or not. So on to the first issue. Mr. Speaker, my partner continuously told you, as long as there is no harm to others, as it is based on rational calculus, we have to respect everybody in our society. Right? Because preference, especially about the health, is totally different between each other, and everybody has equal meaning. That's why we have to respect the choice. We consistently told you there is no harm. Only Korean we have their side of the harm. They said the harm is waste of money. However, as I already pointed out, the people who go to the hospital is also paying the taxes. Only because we cut their side. The amount of money is not sustainable. This is unfair. However, the unfairness is not the criteria. My partner already told you we have no response from the government. And secondly, more importantly, we think this kind of preference about health is totally based on the rational calculus because they willingly choose certain lifestyle. For example, with the latest lifestyle, and so on and so forth. That's why in this particular cases, we have to allow this kind of preference. However, Mr. Speaker, after their proposal, the only health healthy lifestyle is the only value because states actively impose self-value because my DP partner already told you after their proposal the unhealthy lifestyle will be stigmatized. We have no response from government because for legal enforcement or social pressure. On the other hand, they said the paternalistic stance is absolute, such as seatbelt or so on and so forth. However, distinction between seatbelt and this plan is whether it deprives of choice or not. In case of seatbelt, we do not deprive the choice of the driver. However, in this plan, they actively infringe the choice about health. That's why we say the paternalistic idea about seatbelt analogy does not stand. That's why we say it is totally unjustifiable to impose certain value about health. No, thank you. So on the second issue, whether or not the regular medical check system is socially responsible or not. They say regular medical check-up is socially responsible. Firstly, because they say the finding to disease at first stage is very beneficial. However, we don't think so. Firstly, in general, there are many people who do not prioritize the health. My partner continuously told you. That's why whether we can find disease at first stage is not the criteria in the first place. And secondly, more importantly, Mr. Speaker, even in the status quo, there are so many people who do not go to the hospital, even though they know the fact. For example, the elderly or not. That's why we say the disease itself is not the criteria to decide the social responsibility. And more than that, they say after, as I already pointed out, after you find the disease by checkup system, you go to the hospital and waste money, as they said. Only response we have from the Deputy Prime Minister, the amount of waste is totally small because you can predict the harm very early stage. However, it is clear contradiction because on the outside they say the intention that you pass unhealthy life itself is unacceptable. However, on the other side, they say that it is okay for them if the waste of money is small. We do not understand their stance in the first place. And secondly, more importantly, we think the predictability itself is out of criteria. My partner already told you, for example, in case of tobacco or alcohol, the smoker and drinker can predict the future consequences. However, in the status quo, we allow that. That's why we say predictability is totally out of criteria. And more than that, even if this kind whether you can predict or not is the criteria, why don't you encourage this kind of activity? For example, in case of Japan, the Japanese government actively encourage this kind of health check system. That's why we say we do not see any necessity to stigmatize this kind of lifestyle. Before moving on, our explanation. Yes.
Okay, we are not opposing lifestyle choice like smoking alcohol. We are saying that we oppose the harm which stems from a choice to the people who have no responsibility whatsoever. This is why we are not opposing choice in general, but we are opposing a choice which causes harm, and therefore we have to prevent this harm by punishing those people. How's your country?
Yeah, so you totally agree the choice itself. As I already told you, in this choice is totally based on the rational curriculum, and this choice do not create the harm. That's why the point of information does not stand. On the other hand, my partner already told you, this kind of checking system is too additional burden for every single citizen. Why? Because for some people, this kind of checkup system is totally unacceptable. For example, they have to waste the time where you are forced not to eat, to drink, barrier, or so on and so forth. That's why we say this kind of checking system is totally infringement of the preference. Only response we have Deputy Prime Minister. They said that after their proposal, everyone do. That's why no one receives the harm from, for example, company or so on and so forth. However, Mr. Speaker, it is totally ridiculous because whether you receive the harm is not objective, but the subjective criteria in the first place. That's why we say we think under our model that this kind of checking system is totally additional, which is totally unacceptable for every citizen. Mr. Speaker, what I told you is quite simple. As long as there is no harm to others, they fail to explain. As long as it is based on rational curriculum, we have to prioritize all preference because preference is totally different. And more than that, as I already told you, for everyone, this kind of checking system is totally additional burden. We are the one who goes to the fire.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and Mrs. Speaker again. Today, I found decided to take very strange stance. What they want to protect, the intention or the amount of money? We couldn't understand what the government side tried to say. And if their criteria is the intention, then why we allow the direct cause, which is actively harming themselves? And if their criteria is amount of money, then why we allow this the national healthcare system itself? They never clearly show what they want to protect in the first place. But on the other hand, opposition side clearly shows what they want to, what we want to save. That is the choice of people. And we already told you why choice is important for individual life, because choice is the way to make themselves better. So to protect the choice of each individual, we proudly oppose this motion on 2 criteria. Number 1, the legitimacy to take this proposal. So the government have an authority or legitimacy to infringe the individual choice. And second of all, the practical consequence is that we just put an additional burden and we just deprive the choice of their action of citizens. Moving on to the first issue about the legitimacy. This government said very generic explanation never tells you why we have to deprive the choice of their action of citizens. Mr. Speaker, today's the affirmative side tried to show the intention can be a criteria, or the future risk can be a criteria, or the waste of tax can be a criteria. But they never fail to show what is the unique point of in this particular scenario. The intention, my partner already told you, the intention can't be a criteria, and if they can't be a criteria, why we don't ban the direct cause. And second, the future risk. We already told you the future risk can't be a criteria because the predictability can't be a criteria to infringe the individual choice. And in case of tobacco and alcohol, my partner already told you. And today's only example from the affirmative side is a seatbelt. But we already respond. Seatbelt deprives nothing. That's why we allow such kind of seatbelt. And the waste of tax, we already pointed out. The waste of tax can't be a criteria because the nature of national healthcare itself is unfairness, because the old people universally pay for tax, and of course the amount of paid tax is different from person to person. So such kind of amount of criteria can't be a reason to infringe the individual choice. And we clearly told you why we have to uniquely respect the choice in this particular situation. That is the bodily autonomy, Mr. Speaker. And we clearly told you there's no harm to others, as they already pay tax for national healthcare system. That's why they can utilize it. And by taking this proposal, we just utilize their time for them, Mr. Speaker. So that's why there's no reason to infringe the very precious right of individual. That's why in the first aspect, that is totally outside. And second of all, about the practical consequence. The very simple and crappy analysis come from the affirmative side is, the amount is important. So by taking this proposal in the future, we can conserve the time or money, Mr. Speaker. But we already told you that such kind of the too simple analysis is ridiculous. My partner already told you, and me already told you, that the importance and gravity of each individual action is different from person to person. And so at this moment, the importance of the work and the importance of the money is different from person to person. That is a clear reason we have to respect the individual choice. And by taking this proposal, we just put the additional burden for them who do want to utilize their own time, and who do want to fulfill their own interest or their own instincts to eat or other kind of activity. So by taking this proposal, we arbitrarily infringe the individual choice by taking this proposal. For all those reasons, we are very best one to go to the grand final. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I hope you have noticed already that the crucial theory of the negative side, as I say at the early part of my previous speech, they never explained to us, Mr. Speaker, that the actual reason why they should oppose the motion. They say there are some other choices which are also risky, which might pose burden to a healthcare system, but they never explained as well in this case as well, Mr. Speaker. We should respect the choice not to go to hospital, Mr. Speaker. They never explained to us substantive reason why this choice not to go to hospital medical checkup has a substantial and important meaning, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, they have an extremely negative position because they have shown us the specific reason or the applicability of the principle, Mr. Speaker, to this specific case, Mr. Speaker. Like in terms of time and money, Mr. Speaker, which they try to assert, First of all, they don't explain why these things are extremely restricted under our proposal, because obviously we are not causing, for example, massive amount of damage, as you can see in common sense, right? But secondly, Mr. Speaker, we have given you lots of response, Mr. Speaker, because my point told you in the definition, first of all, that we're not going to cause any money by those people, because we are going to set these institutions. The system was free. And furthermore, I gave you additional response, Mr. Speaker. I analyzed the fact that, Mr. Speaker, no one is going to lose out because they are not going to have any comparative advantages in any sense, Mr. Speaker. And furthermore, in terms of a job or something, Mr. Speaker, as a whole workplace, for example, there will be no massive harm, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, there is no harm, Mr. Speaker. This is privatization. But, Mr. Speaker, you make privatization by comparing two choices, right? We told you the value of health. So, what's the other choice? They have to privatize over health, Mr. Speaker. They never explain to us what that choice, what that value is, Mr. Speaker. They have to compare against health. We told you how health is important, spending so much time, Mr. Speaker, so they feel on this burden. So based upon this, I'm going to examine two issues. Firstly, the principle, and secondly, practical consequences, which was presented by both sides of the House. Firstly, in terms of principle, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister told you clearly how tax money is a fruit of labor, and furthermore, Mr. Speaker, we already punish people, Mr. Speaker, who do not pay tax, and therefore, deliberately and voluntarily wasting tax should be the same category as not paying tax, Mr. Speaker. That's why we told you no direct engagement, Mr. Speaker. We told you at the heart, Mr. Speaker, 3.5 trillion yen Germans have to pay German taxpayers. Majority of them have no responsibility whatsoever for smoking, but those money are spent for smoking people, right? That money is not going to the people, Mr. Speaker. For example, if we lose money out of the job, out of the responsibility for recession, or people with handicap, etc., those people are losing out, Mr. Speaker. That's an extreme harm to society, Mr. Speaker. Now, the only response coming from them was that, as I say in my introduction, they gave us sort of analogy. Like, for example, dangerous job. First of all, we never explicitly said we tolerate and we accept those risky, dangerous people to cause burden on insurance, right? That was not our stance. My point I told you, Mr. Speaker, but which I told you, we would be also happy to oppose those things and exclude them from health insurance in the first instance. But secondly, more importantly, my Mr. Speaker drawn a distinction between those examples, right? In terms of societal harm, Mr. Speaker, my point I told you, those dangerous jobs are, Mr. Speaker, forced to join private welfare so that they can minimize the cost of the public health system, Mr. Speaker. No response from the Whip Speaker. And secondly, we gave you an example of self-injury where the government already did not pay, Mr. Speaker, for national health care insurance because self-injury is inflicted by themselves, Mr. Speaker. We gave you, Mr. Speaker, the distinction between their example and our specific case, Mr. Speaker, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, even if their analogy are somewhat important, that does not apply to this case, Mr. Speaker, and that is why, Mr. Speaker, we think pretty small line on the side of the House. But one more thing, we told you we told you about the predominant intervention, Mr. Speaker. My point I also told you how, I also told you in my POI, how in the case of dangerous job, as Togashi said, those people are facing risk all the time, right? And therefore, this is short-term cost they can't see by themselves, but on the contrary, we're talking about disease which only takes effect in the long term, Mr. Speaker. That is why individuals do not have the capacity to predict in the long-term harm, and therefore you have to have paternalistic intervention so that they will be forced to go to hospital, Mr. Speaker, because individuals are not capable of making fair utilitarian calculus by comparing the short-term effect and long-term effect, Mr. Speaker. Lastly, practical. I already told you how they practical doesn't understand in my introduction, so let's look at the benefit, Mr. Speaker, because it told you clearly, Mr. Speaker, how the taxpayers are embarrassed, Mr. Speaker, as a consequence, not enough money is going to the people who really need it, and we think that's the first benefit. But secondly, we talked about the individual benefits. Now they're suffering, and now they're dying from a disease which develops. They only find out after it's too late, Mr. Speaker. Now, under our proposal, we are going to have those individuals detect the disease, Mr. Speaker, so that, Mr. Speaker, they can cure it early so that they can live longer, Mr. Speaker. That is a huge benefit for society and individual because there was no harm, Mr. Speaker. We are extremely proud to propose.